There's been a lot of talk recently about whether or not an NHS trust could face charges of corporate manslaughter. So I thought I could just give you a little bit of an overview as to what that actually is. And I'll try to avoid the black letter law as much as possible and just sort of, put it in sort of lay terms because it is all a bit complex. First of all, just to explain, there didn't used to be a specific offence of corporate manslaughter or corporate homicide. We had what we call gross negligence manslaughter, and companies could be prosecuted under that. Individuals could, but so could also companies. But the big problem they found was, we've talked before about mens rea. There's got to be a mental element. So you had to find a controlling mind, as they called it, somebody who was specifically responsible for the act or the omission that led to the death. And that was always a huge problem because, corporate entities, quite often they have very nebulous management structures. And there's, a lot of things that go wrong. There are a series of little things going wrong that add up into one big thing. So, how do you pin it on one particular person? I mean, easy enough if it's like a single shareholder, single director, building company or something. But if it's a huge organisation, and this cropped up in the Townsend Torreson case. I mean, it's fairly obvious, sailing with doors open. That's got to be a bad idea. But whose idea actually was it? And it turned out to be very hard to pin it on any particular person. So in 2007, an act was introduced, the Corporate Homicide and Corporate Manslaughter Act. It's got sort of two titles because it's applicable in both England and Wales and Scotland. And what that is, that tried to widen the offence and make it easier to prosecute. So now you don't have to find this, controlling mind. You don't have to identify any specific people. You just have to show that the way the company was organised at a senior management level was somehow deficient. Okay, what sort of organisations are covered by this? Well, it's not just companies; it's organisations generally, and it's well established. It actually says in there that the NHS and NHS trusts are, liable to be bound by the Act because they're creatures of statute. They were created by Acts of Parliament. It can't be a fault of just like lower level staff, although if these, if that's as a result of say, bad training or bad monitoring at a senior level, then that can count. You've got to owe a duty of care to the relevant person, but that can be if you are just providing services, which the NHS obviously does. Then that creates the duty of care. And basically, you've got to do it in a way. The test is a bit weird because they've said things. Judges have said, well, the test, for how serious the breach has to be is it has to be something that is worthy of being a crime, which seems a little bit sort of tautological and self-referential. But that's it. I mean, basically, it is pretty much just left up to the general public, represented by 12 good men and women of true, to sort of decide, is this something that crosses the line? Like I say, individuals can still be prosecuted for gross negligence manslaughter. So if they could find one person who'd made a bad decision, they could go after them. But companies no longer can be. But also there are other offences as well. There can be breaches of the Health and Safety Act in terms of, are you providing a safe system, there. And the rules are that actually you can prosecute simultaneously for both the corporate manslaughter and also the health and safety breaches. What are the penalties? They're financial, obviously, because you can't send a company to prison. But the fines are anywhere between 180,000 and 20 million. And you look at the seriousness of the breach, not the actual financial resources of the company. And they are designed effectively quite often to put companies out of business. I mean, obviously you wouldn't put the NHS out of business, even with a large fine. But that's the whole point of it. It's like, this is so bad that perhaps it's no bad, it's in the public interest that you're no longer allowed to sort of be in business. But there you go. I hope you found that useful. If people want more detail about all the technical side of this, then just let me know in the comments. Anyway, if you found that interesting or useful, please consider clicking the like button, subscribing and sharing, etc.